Georgia's identity last season began and ended with defense. 5 Bulldogs on that side of the ball were drafted in the first round of this year's NFL draft, including first overall Trayvon Walker. Dogpost.com calculated that Georgia's defense specifically allowed fewer than 9 points a game, and if you filter out garbage time, it was less than a touchdown per game. No matter what you thought of their strength of schedule, they did shut down Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Bryce Young in crunch time of the national championship game. Because Georgia's defense was that heralded, it may seem like they did the heavy lifting despite the play of quarterback Stetson Bennett. But a deeper look actually provides a different perspective, that Bennett is a great gunslinger, and one of the reasons why Georgia will be in the national championship conversation this year. Welcome to the Football Analytics Show podcast. I'm Edward Egros here, continuing our preview of the upcoming football season. The cliche defense wins championships had a home in college football for a long time. Since 2011, the top team in the sport finished with the number 1 scoring defense 6 out of 11 times. No offensive statistic carries that kind of weight, though that trend deserves a ton of context, and it's always better to look at every team competing instead of just the champion. Still, more often than not, the winning team kept opposition out of the end zone almost regardless of its offensive potency. Some of those great defensive teams that did not have a quarterback who was matching the strength of that side of the ball. 2011 and 2012 featured A.J. McCarron, who had a solid completion percentage but tended to throw shorter passes and was part of an offense that seemed to stress the run more. But 2013 was the first opportunity to say that teams can be well-rounded. Florida State won the title that year and had the number 1 scoring defense and the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback in Jameis Winston. 2017 went back to the way the stereotype was, with the Crimson Tide featuring Jalen Hurts, who only completed 61% of his throws and was relieved by Tua Tagovailoa in the national championship game. 2018 was different, with Trevor Lawrence leading the way. But often there remained this stigma where if defense is the identity of a football team, it's because the quarterback or skill players on the other side aren't flashy enough. In some cases, that trend may be true, but for last year's Georgia Bulldogs, that idea should not apply. It wasn't just this insane defense carrying everyone. What Stetson Bennett did on his own was ultimately of a championship caliber. Let's break down his play. Stetson Bennett was not heavily recruited out of high school. He began his collegiate career at Georgia, was essentially squeezed out of the quarterback room, transferred to a junior college, but then returned to Athens only to have to keep constantly proving his worth next to highly touted transfers. He was not the starting gunslinger to start last season. JT Daniels was. But Daniels suffered a couple of unfortunate injuries, sidelining him for much of the year. He had an oblique problem in the season opener, eventually came back, but then had a lat muscle injury in the first half of the third game of the season. Bennett took over and kept the starting job for good, all while his coaches constantly fielded questions about when Bennett would return to the bench. Bennett won the national championship and is still Georgia's starting quarterback, while Daniels has since transferred to West Virginia. Daniels didn't play a lot, so when looking at offensive team numbers for the season, his contributions do not change what we're seeing very much. CFB-graphs.com put together expected points added for all pass plays last season, filtering out scrambles and sacks, and Georgia ranked 4th in the country. Did having big leads matter here? Well, Georgia's EPA per rush ranked 73rd, so in one respect, the passing game was what kept the Dogs looking so dominant for so long. For an individualized statistic, ESPN's quarterback rating, which values all things a quarterback can do, including rushing, then adjusts for strength of opposing defenses, said Bennett had the 3rd best season in America, trailing C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Not only that, QBR goes back to 2004 and ranks the best seasons among every quarterback in that time frame. Not including 2022 because of small sample size, Bennett ranked 43rd. That number beats out nearly all of those title-earning quarterbacks who also had the luxury of elite defenses. CollegeFootballData.com has its predicted points added metric and ranked Bennett 9th overall last season. combining passing and rushing plays. But evaluating quarterbacks does not end with these statistics. There's nuance to uncover, and even after that exercise, this positive evaluation of Bennett shouldn't change. While I've talked before about predicting the Heisman involving maximizing variance to some degree, like finding quarterbacks and offensive coordinators working together for the first time to surprise voters, the overall trend is to promote coaching consistency. Bennett has this dynamic, working with offensive coordinator Todd Monken and head coach Kirby Smart for a second straight season. We've also discussed on this podcast the importance of play action, with analysts like Josh Herbsmeyer emphasizing the point that offenses don't run play action enough. At this point in football, the more play action, the better. Per PFF, Bennett was part of play action roughly 35% of his dropbacks, which ranks 46th out of 146 qualifying quarterbacks. It could be better, but it's not abysmal. There should also be an emphasis on throws over the middle between the hash marks, because receivers can have more room for yards after the catch, sideline limits catch radius, etc. Bennett is above average on nearly all throws over the middle between 5 to 15 yards, the sweet spot for moving the chains. Again, it could be better, but it's more than enough to be productive. The offensive coaching staff largely puts Bennett in positions to succeed. While this emphasis of over-the-middle throws and play-action passing should exist, using all parts of the field, no matter the context, by focusing on advantageous matchups, that is the name of the game. Bennett's average depth of target was 10.3 yards, good for 16th highest, and his yards per attempt of 10 yards even, ranked 3rd highest. And his adjusted completion percentage that PFF calculates, or the rate of aimed passes thrown on target, that ranked 23rd in 2021. Something else many analysts have stressed about Bennett is his underrated rushing ability. In today's game, a quarterback who can run is arguably more important than ever, because even if every target is covered, often it opens up space to take off, becoming the ultimate equalizer. CollegeFootballData.com said the Bulldog ranked 18th in average PPA per rush. Those feet came in handy against Michigan in the college football playoff. 3 carries for 32 yards against an elite defense. Lastly, more than any other sport, the schedule matters. Though defense is tougher to predict than offense from one year to the next, one way to look at what Stetson Bennett is going up against is by looking at CFB-Graph's defensive EPA from last year. During the regular season, the toughest challenge the Dogs will face, per 2021 data, is against Mississippi State, ranked 31st in EPA defense per game. The true challenge may not come until the SEC championship game against, in all likelihood, Alabama, who ranked 11th in this same metric, by the way. Georgia deserves to be in the national championship conversation once again. The talent returning and replacing will be enough to win the SEC East and put the Bulldogs in the same position as last year. Yes, when it comes to avoiding turnovers but crafting gaudy plays, Stetson Bennett may not have what Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud have, but there's a difference when a quarterback gets to work with the ones and knows he is the starter throughout the season. That fact, coupled with additional experience, his athletic ability passing and rushing, and his knowledge of a more complex offense, should make him stand out as a reason to remain optimistic about Georgia. Thanks again for listening to this installment of the Football Analytics Show. This is Edward Egros. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram for my latest insights at EdWithSports. That's at EdWithSports. The Power Rank Sports Betting newsletter brings PhD-level analytics to football. The newsletter strives to be 3 things: valuable, concise, entertaining. The content covers both the NFL and college football. To get this free service, sign up at thepowerrank.com. That is EdFang's site for betting information based on PhD analytics. Once again, that's thepowerrank.com. The Football Analytics Show is also sponsored by listeners like you. These kind, generous people also get access to a premium episode every month. If you choose to donate, you'll get access to an episode on home and rest advantage in football. To learn more, go to patreon.com/footballanalytics. Once again, that's patreon.com/footballanalytics. Thanks again for listening, and take care.